expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all of the information you need early on for Game Week 21. All right, we're going to start off then with a quick run through of goalkeepers. We're going to start off by looking at points, expected points for Game Week 21 in isolation. By the way, if you want to check this data out for yourself at your own leisure, you can subscribe to Fantasy Football Hub. There's a link in the description below to sign up. So yeah, if you're interested, sign up using the link in the description. Looking at goalkeepers, we've got Alisson with Nottingham Forest away. Liverpool are just about to kick off against Man United at the time that I'm recording this video. I'm trying to time this video so it can go out perfectly after my live stream after that game. So I'm recording a little bit preemptively. If anything happens in that game to Alisson, I think that obviously opens the door to Kelleher. But I think, the starting Liverpool goalkeeper is fair to say is the top for expected points. Nottingham Forest away. Nottingham Forest not necessarily the most dangerous team from an attacking perspective, and Liverpool definitely one of the strongest defences in the league this season. David Raya with Tottenham at home. Arsenal, despite conceding in recent games, I still feel have performed fairly well defensively. I think, to be honest, they were unlucky to concede against Brighton. They did concede over 1 XGI in that game, but the penalty that they did actually concede was, well, I think questionable as to whether it was actually a penalty. So Tottenham at home for them. I do think that's a game they possibly concede in. But Raya, I guess, as a goalkeeper, particularly in games like that, he could make a lot of saves and still get saves bonus points. Yeah, Rob Sanchez, interesting. So, with FA Cup football happening at the weekend, we all know Maresca likes to shake up his team for midweek fixtures, and with the Game Week 21 deadline being midweek, that raises the question, could Sanchez be benched once again? I think if I was on him going into Game Week 21, just given what we've seen so far this season with that Chelsea rotation, I'd be a little bit hesitant about keeping him. Onana with Southampton at home, Pickford after that as well. I've backed these two to be definitely amongst the top scoring goalkeepers come the end of the season, just in the game in general. I'd also add Sells of Nottingham Forest to that list. He doesn't make this list because he's got Liverpool at home as his fixture. Obviously, Liverpool being easily the best team in the league this season. So he doesn't quite make the cut as top goalkeepers. But I do think across the whole season, Sells, Pickford and Onana will probably be the top 3. Martinez of Villa with Everton away. Good fixture for him. And then Muric of Ipswich, although he isn't starting at the moment for Ipswich. The substitute goalkeeper is. So I'd probably ignore him as an option. And then we've got a view of the next 5 game weeks. I like to look at 1 game week and then 5 game weeks. Because I think when you're making a transfer decision, you really want to do so with more than just a single game week in mind. You want to look around 5 game weeks ahead of time, I would say. Alisson and Pickford are your top 2. That's largely propped up by the fact that they're expected to have a double game week in Game Week 24 or 25. You can see their expected points are slightly raised for each game week, with the percentage probability of each game week being a double applied to their expected points, if that makes sense. So they're the top 2, as expected, really. They're expected to have 6 fixtures over the next 5 game weeks. Raya in 3rd place, followed by Martinez. Sanchez again, who I say probably a risk to not start in Game Week 21. And then Sells, who I said is one of the top keepers. Muric as well as Ipswich, but I'm not sure you can go for Muric anymore. Defenders up next then, and we're seeing a slightly trend really in terms of the top teams that we're seeing on this list. So for Game Week 21 in isolation, Trent is the top defender, followed by Gabriel, Andy Robertson, who he's been all right this season, but I don't think he's played amazing. And I would always say with Robertson, he is a little bit of a minute's risk, just with him not playing at the level he has done in previous seasons. I would say if I was to pick 2 Liverpool defenders, I would go Trent number 1, Virgil van Dijk number 2, because at least with Virgil van Dijk, you know you're just getting a start every game, unless, of course, he gets injured in this United game coming up. Gabriel's up there as well. I'd always back Gabriel as one of the top defenders in the game, regardless of who he's playing, just with how dangerous he is from set pieces. Got Munoz in there. Owners so far can count themselves really unlucky that they haven't had attacking returns for him recently. I think Leicester away is another chance, of course, for attacking returns. But I think Palace have definitely turned things up defensively. They've been, not unlucky to not keep clean sheets. I'll get my words out. But I do think against Leicester, they could well do okay in that one. And then after that, we got Saliba and my other favourite cheap defender as well in Lewis Hall. Over the next 5 game weeks then, the list is relatively similar. So we got Trent, Robertson, Gabriel, Virgil, Van Dijk as your top 4. Munoz, Guardiola, and Dean as the other three on the list. I don't really think there's a whole lot to say on these guys. Other than Guardiola, he didn't make the list for Game Week 21 in isolation, but he's up there for top get defenders for the next 5. Are Man City slightly turning a corner? Maybe. Enough to convince me to buy Guardiola? Probably not. But I would still say every single time I see Man City and Guardiola play, he has a genuine chance of scoring a goal. So he's still ridiculous from an attacking perspective. So that's probably what I'd say on the defenders for the top 5. Midfielders, we got Palmer, number 1, Salah, number 2. Interestingly, Salah is not the top player for expected points in Game Week 21. Him having Forest away, I think Nottingham Forest is a relatively tough fixture for him. So I think it leaves the door open for captaincy to put it on another player. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Bruno Fernandes underneath that. Southampton at home, obviously a good fixture for him. And Mbumo with Man City at home. You know, I spoke about Man City when talking about Guardiola. I don't necessarily think I'd back Man City defensively at all yet. And Brentford at home, I think, could score against anyone. I certainly don't back Man City defensively. Do I think they can score goals? Yes. So I back Mbumo and probably Man City attacking that game. Gordon, he's in great form recently. Wolves at home, a good fixture for him. I'd say Mbumo and Gordon are definitely players that I am personally eyeing up to bring into my team. And then we see 2 Palace boys in Eze and Ismaila Sarr. Leicester away, good fixture for both of them. I just question if it's worth spending the extra money on Eze because he'll only share penalty duties, as I believe it, with Mateta. So is he really worth the difference? You know, that 0.8 million difference, or 0.7 million, I should say, difference between him and Sarr. For the next 5 game weeks, Salah is number 1. He's got that potential double game week in 25 or 24 and 25, sorry, so that's factored into his expected points. Again, similar to what we saw with the defenders and goalkeepers, the percentage likelihood of a double game week on each of these weeks is factored into the expected points, so it's not absolutely blown out of proportion. Palmer number 2, Mbumo back up there in number 3. Once that Liverpool game's out of the way, to be honest, only that Liverpool game is the tough fixture there. And would you completely rule out Mbumo with the form that he's in and how well he usually plays against the big teams? Would you completely rule out his chances of doing something against Liverpool? So yeah, outside of that, I'd say he's playing teams I consider targeting. Ismaila Sarr and Eze are up there. Palace have got a nice run. Bruno Fernandes up there, and Anthony Gordon as well. And I quite like to talk about the cheap midfielders as well, because we can't just fill out our teams with purely expensive midfielders, which we're seeing at the top of the list. So Sarr and Eze are the top 2, followed by Kulusevski. We've got Martinelli in there, who kind of sharing minutes at the moment for Arsenal. And then we got a few sub-6 million midfielders in Semenyo, Ahmad, and Rodgers. Now, I'm looking at Rodgers. He's bottom of this list, although that still suggests he's one of the best cheap midfielders. But he's bottom of this list. I think of all of the sub-6 million goalkeepers then, of all of the sub-6 million midfielders in the game right now, for me, Rodgers is my favourite. You know, he's starting every game he's fit for Villa, largely playing 90 minutes. Emery absolutely loves him. I think, I was talking to some Villa fans after the game in 20, and despite getting a result, they were not happy with how they played without him. They really said they missed him. So he's going to be playing back in that team. And I think, again, regardless of the opposition that Aston Villa play, I think Rodgers has proven he can be dangerous and, you know, give any team a run for their money. I really like him as an option. I think he's the best at this price point. Despite Sarr, Ahmad and Semenyo having better expected points, yeah, I put Rodgers still at number 1. On to the forwards then. And interestingly, Isak is the number 1 forward. Wolves at home for him. Comparatively with Haaland, I'd say could well be the better fixture. Although I have my opinions on Haaland for Game Week 21. I actually think, we'll get onto it in a second, but I actually think he could be a good outside chance shout of a captain, alongside, of course, Isak. So yeah, Wolves at home for Isak, Brentford away for Haaland. Cunha's up there, Newcastle away. I always have a feeling about Newcastle in St James's Park. I just feel they really turn it up a notch when they play at home. They can genuinely keep a clean sheet and get a result against anyone. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them keep a clean sheet against Wolves there. But you obviously can't deny or hide from the form that Cunha's been in, obviously pre the ban. João Pedro, sold him ahead of Game Week 20. Scored the pen against Arsenal, couple of assists the game week before, and then he's got Ipswich in Game Week 21. So as a João Pedro seller, I'm looking like a bit of a mug at the moment. Ipswich away is obviously a really good fixture for him. Mateta turning up the form a little bit. Leicester away, good fixture for him. Obviously, Crystal Palace turning things up a little bit as well. I think he could be a good option. Good price as well, the 7.2 million. Wissa, Man City at home for him. I said that I talked about Man City when going through Mbumo. I wouldn't completely rule out his chances of scoring in that game. I don't think you can justify just absolutely buying him ahead of that game. But if you had him, I wouldn't be too concerned. I wouldn't want to sell him. And then Jackson, Bournemouth. Nicholas Jackson's an interesting one, isn't he? I've done a couple of, well, I did a reaction stream Sunday morning after the action in Gameweek 20. And a lot of people were considering hopping off Nicholas Jackson. And I can definitely see the case for it, especially with that Chelsea midweek rotation. But I just think he's going to come good. And if it were me owning Nicholas Jackson, I'd find it really difficult to sell him. I know he's not been in good form recently, but he's proven this season he can score a good amount of Premier League goals. I'd probably keep the faith. Okay, for the next 5 game weeks, again, Isak is the #1 striker, followed by Haaland, Cunha. Then we got Chris Wood in 4th, João Pedro, Mateta, and Solanke. I don't think there's any players here that I've not mentioned previously, apart from maybe Solanke. But I think with Solanke, I don't know. I just genuinely prefer all the strikers above him, really. I don't think I would probably keep him if I had him, but I don't think there's a justification, at least in my mind, to be buying Solanke over any of the other strikers ahead of him. You know, you might berate me in the comments for that, fair enough, but that's just my view. So those are your top forwards for expected points over the next 5. Clean sheet odds then. Arsenal #1 with 42%. Man United, obviously with Southampton at home on 40. Newcastle 38. Liverpool 36. And Crystal Palace on 30. Usually when I look at clean sheet odds, this is according to 11ify, by the way, good projection model on 11ify. I'll leave a link to 11ify in the description to check it out for yourself. Usually when looking at clean sheet odds, I prefer teams with 30% or above odds. That would be kind of where I start players from. So you can see there we got Palace, Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United and Arsenal above 30. And then to be fair, Villa, Brighton, Man City, Chelsea and Everton all relatively, and West Ham to be fair, all relatively close. Fulham, Leicester, Ipswich, Forest only on 16%. Obviously they got Liverpool. Stranger things have happened though. The Nottingham Forest keeping a clean sheet at home to Liverpool. Obviously in the reverse fixture, they beat them 1-0 and kept a clean sheet at Anfield. So obviously that was relatively early on in the season in Arne Slot's reign at Liverpool. But, you know, stranger things have happened, like I said. Brentford, Bournemouth, Southampton, Spurs and Wolves look like the teams to target this week from a defensive point of view. I spoke about captaincy, didn't I? And the expected points data kind of disagrees with where I think I'm going to go with it. But I think with Salah about to play Nottingham Forest away from home, and with just how good Nottingham Forest have been defensively this season, albeit they still haven't played against Wolves yet in Gameweek 20, so jury's out for how they play in that one. And potentially with Murillo being a little bit of an injury risk, I think that might knock them down a little bit. But I do still think they're strong defensively, particularly at home. And if there was ever a week not to captain Salah, I think it could be Gameweek 21. Personally, as a Haaland owner, with Brentford away being his fixture, I'm of the right mind to give the armband to Haaland. I genuinely think, though, there are 4 genuine captaincy options this week. Palmer, Salah, Isak and Haaland. And I think there is a genuine justification to captain either player. And I don't think there is an absolute outstanding one. For me, I think I'm going to go for Haaland because, well, he's the double Golden Boot winner. He's looks to be picking up form again, particularly with Savinho in the team. And he just looks happy again, like I said, back in form. And I own him. So I think if you own Haaland, it's a good opportunity to stick the armband on him. But if you don't, you can't really ignore Isak with Wolves away. Salah is obviously, even though he's got a tough fixture, he's obviously still a good captain. And if he does something good in the Man United game, which is currently going on at the moment as I'm recording this video, then it's going to be hard-pressed not to go for him. Likewise, Palmer. I do think Chelsea are not... They're not finding the end gears yet where Palmer's actually... I don't know. I just don't feel like he's got a haul coming, but that's probably when he actually gets a haul, when you don't see it coming like it did earlier on in the season. So yeah, captaincy, I think, is really widespread between Palmer, Salah, Isak and Haaland this week. I probably wouldn't go outside of those 4. And for me as a Haaland owner, I'm really tempted to give it to him. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that, found it useful, gave you a little bit of thought in preparation ahead of Game Week 21. I know I'm getting in a little bit early with this video, and I might well revise it after the cup fixtures are done, but just a good bit of early thinking ahead of Game Week 21 to get your eye in with transfers and top players and captaincy, etc. So yeah, if you did enjoy the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of those expected points totals and my thoughts there on the captaincy. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.